Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you yet again another Legend of Korra episode review right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, as always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's Legend of Korra episode review. Now, this is episode 4 entitled The Voice in the Night, and in this week's episode, Republic City Councilman Tarrlok tries to recruit Korra into joining a special task force that he has formed in order to oppose Amon and his Equalists movement. Throughout the episode, he sends Korra multiple favors in order to convince her to join, and by the end, she decides to do so. This leads her to actually challenging Amon to a duel, and only to find herself being ambushed, and then of course for Amon to pretty much give her his threat, if you will, his declaration of war, if you will, in this episode. And so of course that's where Korra's story ends for that episode. But at the same time, another story we had developing in this week's episode was Mako, who through a very interesting and convenient accident that takes place on the street, he gets introduced to Sasami Sato, who is actually the daughter of Hiroshi Sato, who is the founder, or the creator, actually the inventor of the Satomobile, which is the most popular automobile that they have in Republic City, and I think in the Avatar world. And so what happens, Mako now, dating this very, very beautiful, very rich young lady, and of course getting in good graces with her father. Hiroshi has decided to officially sponsor the Fire Ferrets as they compete in the championship tournament. So now Mako, Bolin, and Korra now have the financial backing that they need in order to compete in the tournament. Now that we've pretty much gotten the main plot out of the way, few things I want to discuss about this week's episode. First off, I'm glad that they're starting. I'm glad that the series is starting to do something with the council members. Prior to this, I think we might have only seen them once, and we know that Tenzin is a member of the council. Anywho, tongue-tied. But I really did enjoy actually seeing them, like seeing an actual meeting with them, and also I like what they've been doing with Tarrlok. I like the relationship that we see developing. Like, we see the nature of the relationship between him and Tenzin. We see some of Tenzin's frustrations in dealing with Tarrlok, and also how their views on how Republic City should be run, how they differ. So I like that we got to see that in this episode, that it's starting to explore those relationships more often. Honestly, I really like the character of Sasami Sato. I really like her. Her character design is fantastic. I think that, okay, now hear me out, because I've already noticed that they're going to play around with these, these romantic relationships, where I thought what they were setting up was going to be a potential love triangle between Bolin, Mako, and Korra. Now, by adding Sasami into that mix, it changes the dynamic of those relationships now. So now it's not really so much of a love triangle as it is now it's two love triangles if you think about it. But what I'm saying is, by introducing that character into the fold, it doesn't make it as obvious. It makes it a little bit more ambiguous as to the nature of which relationship will actually stand the test of the series. So I'm glad that they did it. by introducing her, it throws a corkscrew into what I thought was already a pretty cliche and predictable and formulaic plot device. Let's see what else. I like. Okay, this will probably be the last thing I actually talk about in the episode review is the conversation that took place between Korra and Amon. I'm a huge fan of moments in a story where the enemies talk. And I'm not talking about like before a fight or anything like that. I'm talking about that exchange of dialogue that takes place between two enemies before they are actually on the battlefield. You understand what I'm saying? To use examples of what I'm talking about, for any of you all who have seen Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1, the scene in which Green Goblin and Spider-Man are on the roof talking, that type of scene, I like that type of scene. Or in The Dark Knight, the scene in the interrogation room when Batman and Joker are talking with one another. I like those type of scenes because what it does is those are more often than not, those are the scenes that establish that, well, no, not really establish, but it helps develop the relationship between the hero and the villain, more so than just, oh, this is our hero, this is our villain, this is the conflict, the hero has to stop the villain. More than that, when you get into the scenes when enemies are talking and they're not trying to kill each other, you open the door for exposition into backstories, into development, but most importantly into the relationship between the hero and the villain. Like I said, unless you like the whole cookie cutter, good guy, bad guy, let's do it, that's fine. Me, I like when they actually try and develop a relationship between the hero and the villain. One of my biggest concerns with Avatar The Last Airbender was that there was never a moment in time between Aang and Ozai where that happened. Aang and Ozai had no relationship. It was the cookie cutter hero villain type thing, right? But Aang and Zuko had a relationship that was very well developed by the time you got to the end of season 1. And then of course, when you come into the third season, towards the end of the third season, when you're talking about Zuko and Azula, see the relationships? You see what I'm talking about? My hope is that the series will actually take the direction where they are actually develop a relationship between Korra and Amon, you know, where it's more than just good guy, bad guy, where it may be, I mean, hell, if they were, I'm pretty sure they won't, but I mean, there's so many possibilities. I mean, you could write it to where, you know, right now we have Korra where she actually fears Amon, but I mean, you could write it to where Amon, you know, secretly admires the Avatar, and I don't mean admire in a love way. I mean like he admires the role that the Avatar plays in the world, which technically I think he already does. Because keep in mind, Amon has a messiah complex. He looks at it, he views himself as a savior. So I think if you think about it like that, he actually does admire the concept of what the Avatar represents as being the one to bring balance to the world. You see what I'm saying? He's already trying to fulfill that role. You could write it to where even later on in the series, Korra starts to admire Amon's ability to rally large forces of people behind him. So she could look at him as like, hey, you know, he's a leader. You see what I'm saying? What I'm saying is this: there are so many things you can do with opposing characters that keep them opposing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about them forming some type of alliance. I'm talking about they're still enemies, but you can help develop them as being more than just the cookie cutter formula. That's what I'm talking about. And that's why the scene between Korra and Amon I really like, because I felt like this is the potential first step in that direction. Hopefully. Hopefully. I was curious about the little flash, the little glimpse of images that Korra got, where we saw the Aang gang, if you will. And they also mentioned earlier in the episode that apparently before the start of the Legend of Korra, like 46 years ago, there was some type of conflict in which Avatar Aang had to, step in and knock that shit out. And I think that the glimpses that we saw from the Aang gang, or Team Avatar rather, to be politically correct, Team Avatar, I think those might be connected in some way. So, and once again, like I said, they wouldn't have brought it up if it wasn't for a reason. We wouldn't have seen the glimpses if it wasn't for a reason. I think we're going to find out what that conflict was about, and what I'm hoping will happen, and what I think will actually happen, is that in the process of Korra learning about that past conflict, it will enable her to come to some type of resolution to her current conflict. Because let's face it, that's always been the pattern of Avatar The Last Airbender. Aang learned how to deal with the conflicts from the first series by learning from from the previous avatars. Remember that. That's what Sozin's comment when Aang was talking to each one of his previous, the last 4 avatars, that's what that was about. It was about learning what those avatars' most difficult challenge was and how they overcame it, because it gave him some idea of what he could do to defeat Ozai. And I think by taking a look at whatever it was that Aang and the rest of Team Avatar had to do back then, will help Korra deal with Amon and the Equalists. So I'm hoping that's what will come about. But other than that, another good episode. Like I said, the thing that got me the most in this episode was all of the political intrigue that we are getting introduced to now. The council members, of course, Chief Beifong made another appearance, the press, Korra pretty much being introduced to the who's who of Republic City. I'm hoping that those characters will come more to the forefront later on, and that they will help add to the overall conflict of the story. And then of course we saw Tenzin's kids again in this episode, and they're always a joy to see, because they are fucking hilarious. They are fucking hilarious. And in all honesty, they're my favorite part of this series, is Tenzin's kids. Tenzin, his wife, and the kids. Fucking hilarious. I love them. Anywho, so that's going to wrap it up for this week's Legend of Korra episode review. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. In the comments below, let me know what your thoughts are on this week's episode. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I am signing off, and until next time, peace.